We're often too busy, too preoccupied to truly connect with others on a deeper level. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sandy Adams Show. This is where we talk about life, business, and everything on the in between. And today, I want to dive into a topic that's essential for our emotional well being and relationships: the art of meaningful conversations. I know we're going to go heavy today. Picture this: you're engaged in a conversation where every word spoken feels like a gift, where understanding flows effortlessly, where you leave feeling seen, heard, and valued. That, my friends, that is the magic of a meaningful conversation. In fact, I just had one. I just recorded a podcast for my other podcast, The Fifth Quarter. And I leave those conversations feeling inspired, feeling like I've made a connection with my guest. Because we really, for that hour that I'm interviewing them, that I'm talking to them, I am constantly focused on what they're saying and how I can respond. But I'm listening so that I know what they're talking about and how we can continue. So, yes, we live in a fast paced world. It's filled with the distractions and obligations. These moments can feel all too rare where you have a really great, impactful conversation. We're often too busy, too preoccupied to truly connect with others on a deeper level. So, then how do we carve out space for these essential dialogues, these conversations amidst the chaos of everyday life? It begins with being intentional. Just like when you create your weekly schedule where you know that you have to take a shower, you have to eat lunch, you have to make dinner, you have to go to the grocery store, taking time to be intentional about having a really good conversation or a conversation that's needed is something that you have to do. You're in control of that, actually. A conscious decision to prioritize quality over quantity in our interactions with other people. It's about setting aside, as I said, dedicated time to engage in a conversation or conversations that matter, whether it's with a friend, a family member, or colleague or partner. You know, there are tons of studies and reports about marriages that just dwindle away because they didn't take the time to work at it. Marriage is like anything else. You have to work at the communication. Communication is really, really important. But let's not forget about the crucial role of empathy in fostering these meaningful conversations. Empathy, it's the bridge that allows us to step into someone else's shoes, to understand their perspective, and to respond with kindness and compassion. When we approach conversations with empathy, when we create an environment where trust can flourish and authentic connections can be formed, that is the agenda. That is what you want to do. So, of course, meaningful conversations aren't always easy. Sometimes they require us to lean into discomfort and confront challenging topics head on. Just this past week, I had an actual emergency coaching session. One of my clients, she was having issues with a coworker. And we went through what had happened, how it made her feel, and the responses from everybody else on the team. And the next day, she was going to be in a situation where she was going to have to work with this individual again. So we talked about, are you drowning in work and struggling to stay organized and make progress on your goals? Well, I've got the solution right here. Introducing my Success Blueprint Planner. It's not just any planner, it's a planner and a journal. And it's your tool for taking charge of your busy life and achieving your dreams. Picture waking up each day with clarity and with purpose. knowing exactly what steps to take to advance in your career and in your personal life. The Success Blueprint Planner will keep you on track and motivated to reach your fullest potential. Ready to make this year your most successful yet? I am. Head to my website and grab your copy of the Success Blueprint Planner today. sandy-adams.com/books. So we talked about what and I obviously don't know that person, the her coworker. I don't know what she's going through, what her mind was thinking. I don't know anything of that. And so what I told my client was, you're not responsible for her reaction. You are only responsible for your actions. So let's put these items into place. Let's take these actions and have a conversation with her. I worked with her on how to start her sentences, how to hopefully take control of the conversation. And if she got excited, how to bring it back in, how to rein the conversation in so that it's not getting out of control. So it's not getting to where everybody's hyper in the conversation, because that can escalate the situation. So we went through all of these and she had a really good, firm understanding. And so the next day she went in and she had this meaningful conversation with her coworker. And she said it ended on a positive note. It's these moments of vulnerability that true growth and understanding can occur. See, by embracing discomfort and engaging in difficult conversations with courage and empathy, we open the door to deeper connections and greater intimacy. Not everyone is just because you're comfortable with a difficult conversation doesn't mean the other person is. And so sometimes we have to be the stronger person, even though it scares us to death. We have to be the one that initiates those conversations. But it also means we need to be the one that steers the conversation and keeps it from escalating and from getting out of control. Now, let's talk about technology. While it is undoubtedly revolutionized, technology has the way we communicate, it has also introduced new challenges to our conversations with other people, to meaningful conversations with other people. In a world where we're constantly connected, yet often feel more isolated than ever, it's essential to use technology mindfully. Let's remember to put down our devices when we're talking to someone, look each other in the eye, and engage in real face-to-face conversation. Have you been in meetings where people literally have their phone out and they've got their head staring at their phone and they're just scrolling? I was in a conversation with that several years ago. It was a coaching client of mine. We were having an in-person meeting and I'm talking to her, I'm asking her questions, and the whole time she has her head looking at her phone in her lap and she's scrolling or she's typing. And I went on for about 10 minutes and I stopped and I said, I can't do this. It's really rude that you're doing that. And I was floored that she didn't even realize she was being rude and disrespectful. And she wasn't truly participating in the conversation. And I see that now all the time. People with their phones up while they're still talking to somebody else, but they're looking at their phone. So, how do we cultivate a culture of meaningful conversations in our own lives? It starts with each and every one of us by committing to active listening, vulnerability, and empathy in our interactions. We create an environment where meaningful connections can thrive. Now, let's talk action, because I'm all about giving you an action plan. I'm going to give you the 3 steps that you can take to elevate your conversations. I'm going to give those out to you in case you're taking notes. And then I'm going to go back into each one of them in a little bit more in depth. Number 1, You want to schedule regular conversation dates with loved ones to deepen those connections and foster intimacy. Number two, you want to practice active listening by fully engaging with what others are saying without interrupting or judging. And number three, you want to challenge yourself to initiate one difficult conversation this week. Okay, now let's dive back into those in a little bit more detail. So, the number one, schedule the regular conversation dates. These can be with your partner, with your family members, with good friends of yours. Maybe you don't live close to them. So let's talk about your partners. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said literally every night when he and his wife get into bed, they take like 15 minutes, especially if they've had a really busy day. They take 15 minutes to talk to each other about what has gone on in their day. And then they get to ask each person one more in depth question. It could be about their day, it could be about something that's transpired this week or something that's coming up. But it gives them a chance to really talk, or maybe it's something in the news, or maybe it's, something that's going on in the town or whatever that can be. But it gives yourself a moment, it gives you 15 minutes to connect with that other person. I know some couples that actually go on walks every day and they don't wear headphones. They actually take those moments walking, one to get exercise, but two to also have conversations. Because that might be especially if they have young kids, that might be the only time they really have energy to have a conversation that's more in depth. And if it's friends, I have a lot of my friends don't even live in the same city with me anymore. So I will make sure that I reach out to them once or twice a month to have like a 10, 15, 30-minute conversation. And it's always about, how are your kids doing? How's work? Tell me more about that. And I take time to focus on them first. The second one is to practice active listening. And that's really important. Don't just listen to someone and the whole time you're planning on how you're going to respond to them. Okay? You want to listen to what they're saying, pick up on things that they're saying, how they're saying it, what they're not saying. Really listen. And then when they're finished, because we know those people, right? And I'm going to say I've been as guilty of it as other people. I want to answer like the first thing they say. I've got a response for that. And I'm so caught up in wanting to interrupt them so that I can answer that. And I have to say, in my defense, it's sometimes because I'm going to forget, but I need to wait until they're finished and then talk, respond, commiserate, acknowledge, ask questions, give advice. But you need to actually listen. Now, the third one is a little bit harder because we as humans, we don't necessarily like, oh yeah, I want to go have a hard conversation, a difficult conversation about something I don't really want to talk about, or maybe they don't want to talk about it. But you need to challenge yourself to initiate one difficult conversation this week or next week. Whether it's addressing a misunderstanding with a friend or sharing your feelings with a loved one. Because, we all love sharing our feelings, right? Well, I think as women, we do. But when it becomes men and women, I think we're less likely to do that. But have those conversations. Or maybe, because I have another coaching client, one of his words for the year was I think it was intentional. The actual word intentional. He wanted to be more intentional this year. And part of that was with relationships, okay? And one of the relationships was with his father. And his father had been one of those that worked really hard his whole life and, uh, you know, allowed the mother, his mom, to have the difficult conversations, have the conversations. And he would go to his wife and like, hey, how's so-and-so doing? Those kind of things. And, it comes from that era where men don't actually, they didn't, especially fathers, didn't feel, they were the ones that went out and made the money and brought home the bacon, so to speak, and those kind of things. And so, but as we get older, I think especially people from that generation, I think they start feeling a little bit more um, warm and fuzzy, where they want to know more, they need to know more. And so he had actually told me about two really great conversations that he'd had with his father, and they had been intentional. They were intentionally not talking about the things that had brought them arguments in the past. News and politics. Ain't that the truth, right? And he said both of them were being more intentional about what they did not talk about so that they could actually have conversations and be intentional and bring each other together closer about things that they did have in common. So sometimes it's about, difficult conversations, but it can also be about being intentional about talking about things that you do have in common and being intentional about not talking about things that causes rifts between the two of you. So, as we round this up, remember that meaningful conversations, they have the power to transform relationships. They have the power to foster empathy, and they have the power to cultivate connection. One of the reasons I love doing my podcast so much, especially when I'm interviewing other people, is because I get this. I feel like I know these people. And what I realized was how often do I sit around and have a one-on-one conversation with one of my friends where I'm specifically asking them questions? I'm being intentional about what we talk about. Never, never. And so I've found when I have had my friends on my podcast episodes, if it was relevant, obviously, to them, I really enjoyed them because I found out things I never knew about. One of my friends, Jennifer Lazar, she was episode number 30 on the Fifth Quarter podcast that premiered right at the start of the year. I've known her literally for 30 plus years. But we realized, as much as we've talked about really great, impactful conversations and in-depth conversations about life and humans and education and poverty and all these kind of things, we'd never really had conversations about our lives. And so I had an hour of talking to her, intentionally listening, coming up with these great questions that had to do about her life and her career journey. And I felt closer to her when I ended the podcast episode because I had been intentional. Now, I'm not saying go record podcasts so that you can be closer to your friends, but what I'm saying is maybe think of a couple of questions in your next conversation. Say, hey, we haven't really sat down and talked, like really talked. We've caught up with things and things like that, but, how are you doing in your new job? Is it stressful? What are the people that you work with like? How is it, commuting to work? How do you feel about your job? Being more intentional about what you're talking to them about and not just going through checking the boxes off. Hey, okay, your kids just graduated. Okay, going to school. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So let's commit to making space for these essential dialogues, these conversations in our life. And I want you to take this as a challenge and being intentional let's try it for the next 4 weeks. Pick out a personal, a friend, and a coworker. It's three different types of conversations or categories. And pick out a time, maybe with your partner, maybe it is, okay, 15 minutes at the end of the day. We're going to sit down and talk. Maybe it's have a cup of coffee. Maybe it's we're about to go to sleep, whatever it is. Maybe your coworker. And then a friend. Because I think now a lot of our friends we don't, especially if they have busy lives and they have young kids or kids in high school or middle school and they're doing all the extracurricular activities. Maybe you don't necessarily have the time. But hey, people nowadays, we've got Zoom, right? If there was one good thing about the pandemic is that we learned to video chat quite easily. And now it's like, ooh, let's Zoom. So let's commit to making space for having these essential conversations and making them a more regular part of our lives. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Sandy Adams Show and for being you. I appreciate it. And if you get a chance, go and give me a review on Apple. I would love that. It helps people find my podcast and also learn more about things that can help them in life. Okay, have a great day.